thank you all for being here. We've got a great panel. It's going to be very quick, however, just like everything else here at the Chamber. My name is Jamal El-Hindi, and this is my third or fourth time at this event, so I've been very privileged to work with the Chamber for a few years now. I come to this as a lawyer right now, but previously I was at the U.S. Treasury Department for over 20 years, where I was the deputy director of FinCEN when we came out with all sorts of regulations and rules in this space. So that's me. The Chamber has given us a pretty broad topic, the nexus of blockchain, illicit finance, and national security. And as we got together and thought about it, we felt like we needed to unpack that a bit. And we're going to look at it, essentially, through when you think about how those things come together, we think about it in terms of national security, but also institutional security, institution security, and then personal security. So you're going to hear us try to weave around that as we come together. I'm not going to do this alone. With me are three great panelists in this order. Blake Benthall, formerly an operator of the infamous Silk Road 2.0 network, who has had the pleasure of understanding the legal system and working with the legal system as well in this space. He is now the founder and CEO of Fathom, a blockchain analysis and risk mitigation company that's built on accounting software platform. And next to him is Erin West. She is the founder of Operation Shamrock, which is basically a coalition that is out there to go after bad guys who are going after us as individuals, particularly in the cyberspace. But her previous role for many years was as a prosecutor in LA with the county of Santa Clara. And I've had the opportunity to work with her in the past. And then finally, Kris Klaich, who it shouldn't be a stranger to you. He is the policy director of the Chamber itself. He came into that role after years of experience as a consultant advising governments, both U.S. and non, on national security issues, particularly in this space. So that's us. And as I mentioned before, we're going to weave our way through this topic. But we're first going to start with the notion of personal security. And I wanted to lead off with Erin to explain some of the things that she has been working on and seeing, particularly in the context of cyber-related scams and the use of this ecosystem for those purposes, particularly in the context of pig butchering.
Yeah, it is kind of fun to get used to. Okay, so I'm getting used to it now. We are in a perfect storm for scammers at the moment. We are coming out of COVID, where there is a legitimate national loneliness problem. In fact, the World Health Organization says that there is a loneliness crisis that's happening. And you combine that with the rise of cryptocurrency, and you have a lot of people feeling FOMO about that and feeling as though they have missed an opportunity. So when scammers are targeting our nation in droves, in a very systematic, organized way, they're targeting us for the purpose of developing friendships, relationships online that they are then converting to, do you know how I am so wealthy myself? It's because I invest in cryptocurrency, and I didn't know how, but my uncle taught me and my uncle could teach you. So when you match the hormones that come from, I'm in a new relationship that I've developed online that seems somewhat legitimate in today's lifestyle, and then combine it with, and also I could become wealthy, what we're seeing is Americans getting literally smashed in the face as they try to navigate what's happening and what's coming at them in a really organized way. And it's called pig butchering. And for the last 3 years of my 26-year career as prosecutor, I came to realize that this is a national crisis, and it's actually a national security crisis in that we are losing tens of billions of dollars straight into the hands of Chinese organized criminals. And it's the biggest crisis that is not being well handled by everybody that touches it. And so that's why I am out and about always talking about it and talking about ways that we have got to unite as a group to make things more safe. So I love an opportunity like this where we are so excited about the growth of cryptocurrency and the acceptance and the mainstream capability here, but at the same time, we need to be really cautious about what is happening and how it's being used against us.
And Blake, I'm going to ask you to reflect on that, but beforehand, one aspect of this on the national and international security front that isn't often covered is it's not just the victims of the scams, but actually people who are trafficked into committing the scams. Can you just say quickly something about that so that people can connect how it's not just a crime that's happening here?
Right. It's happening in industrialized compounds in Southeast Asia where victims are being lured in believing that they've now secured a legitimate job. And when they arrive, they're flown to Bangkok, their passports are taken, and they are bussed into compounds where they are locked down and forced to perform this 17 hours a day.
Okay. So
the threat of violence and death often.
Right. And you know, the fact is that when we look at this aspect of personal security, if we don't have it ourselves, it really undermines the national security as well. So, Blake, I was going to ask you to reflect on that, and then also, to reflect on the fact that you were at the center of Silk Road 2.0. In addition to thinking about what Erin just raised, what do you think policymakers back then might have misunderstood, with respect to what the industry was doing at that time, and then how have things changed?
Yeah, first off, what you're working on, Erin, is super important with Project Shamrock, ultimately helping crypto victims. The reality is way too many people are getting hurt in cryptocurrency right now. Often it's people that are not super tech literate, that honestly shouldn't be touching any crypto tech. And with any technology, there will be good actors and bad actors. So 10 years ago, I saw the federal government take down the Silk Road 1 darknet marketplace. And at age 25, I had the terrible idea to race to rebuild and relaunch it, which I did. So 1 year later, I met the FBI. They arrested me, and I spent about 8 months in jail. And as an inmate, was pitching like crazy, like, please do not let me rot away in jail for the rest of my life. Give me something to do. I'm a builder. Help me build. And I was very grateful to have parents that were able to put money into my legal defense as well, that supported me through that. So I got an extremely rare opportunity to actually work with the federal government for nearly a decade, helping with cryptocurrency investigations and educating on what Bitcoin is and what cryptocurrency is. And generally, what's changed since then is that cryptocurrency has completely proliferated through cybercrime. It's used in the vast majority of cybercrime. But at the same time, governments have become great at tracing it and identifying the bad actors. So I think it's really important for builders in the crypto space to remember that we're building in a multi-jurisdictional world where this technology is just out there, but we're also building with a really bad reputation for our whole industry. Crypto is known as a technology for scams, when I believe it's actually a technology for human rights. So I'm personally building accounting software that will be free for any business that chooses to accept cryptocurrency, to make sure that honesty is the guiding principle with all of our bookkeeping in the industry. And I'm super grateful to be okay and to be in a room full of builders and lawmakers.
So you have said, that when it comes to things like stable coins, privacy has to be table stakes, and you link privacy itself to personal security and national security issues, and yet at the same time, we've kind of with privacy, we may have lack of transparency for government purposes. Just from the position that you have been in, how do you navigate between those two things and think about, well, for national security purposes, we need some kind of transparency, but we also need privacy.
No, there's a comment from the audience to put it closer to your mouth.
Is that better? Oh, I'm so sorry. Do I need to repeat?
No, you're
Yes.
good. Yes.
All right. Okay. Bottom line, Blake, how do you balance the privacy issues that you are promoting with the need for transparency for national security purposes?
Yeah, I mean, for people building in crypto, honesty is table stakes, so keeping accurate records. But I believe privacy is also table stakes. Cash is our gold standard. That's what we're really competing with cryptocurrency. And cash is way more private than accepting or spending Bitcoin or the major blockchain tech today. Actually, sending a wire transfer is more private than spending Bitcoin. When you spend or you accept Bitcoin, that financial transaction is forever public on a blockchain for people to scrutinize. So as we hope that crypto becomes more mainstream, I think it's really important for us to keep in mind that no business in their right mind is going to accept most of the cryptocurrencies the way they're architected today, because the full history of who their customers are and who their employees are and how much they're paying them and their whole balance sheet in terms of crypto is completely public. So I'm a huge fan of technologies like Zcash. And I think the assumption that I had, of course, 10 years ago, that Bitcoin was private, or at least pseudonymous, is the core thing that's changed in the past 10 years, but that I think most people still assume when onboarding and starting to accept Bitcoin, especially as a business.
Okay. Now, Kris, we come to you and we talk about the notion of national security depending on transparency. That is something that I focused on for many years. But recently, over the past couple of weeks, we've seen a hack in the context of purported North Korean-sponsored enterprise simply stealing the assets. And the wealth that they generate through that theft is in and of itself a threat to our national security. It's become fairly transparent. We kind of know, who has been behind it, but the very theft, the fact that they're able to steal. Can you talk a little bit about that in terms of national security concerns in this space?
Yeah, thanks. Absolutely. And in that case, this Bybit hack, which is about a month ago now, just under $1.5 billion was stolen. The largest hack in history, blockchain. I think it's the largest hack or heist in TradFi as well, single heist. So pretty shocking. In this case, as you mentioned, this is North Korea state-sponsored hackers, a Lazarus group that are behind it. Some of you folks who might be familiar with the national security issues and implications of blockchain and hacks, North Korea receives half of their funding for their weapons of mass destruction program via crypto-related hacks, not hacks of the blockchain. For anybody who's not familiar with blockchain tech in that sense, the blockchains haven't been hacked. It's the companies that are being hacked through traditional social engineering, phishing scams, and different ways that they're getting access to keys and just stealing information. So this is an issue that, despite the Tornado Cash ruling that happened a couple of days ago, the days are all running together. Forgive me, I don't know if that's last week now or Monday. It's been so busy recently, but despite that ruling, this issue won't go away. The individual that has charges against him, those have not been dropped. I don't anticipate those being dropped. I don't have any special knowledge, but there isn't a world, potential world in existence where the U.S. government or other governments are okay with North Korea funding their weapons of mass destruction program. For one example, aside from all the other examples that crypto, illicit finance activities happening using crypto, drug programs, drug precursors coming from China, paying for CSAM material, sanctions evasion. These are not issues that the U.S. government looks lightly on, and rightly so. And so I would expect, even though this administration has been much more open and collaborative with the industry, that I wouldn't, in my opinion, I wouldn't take the sign that they've dropped that case as sort of an indication that it's going to be a laissez-faire kind of paradigm moving forward over the next few years.
Yeah, and the way that I come at it from a former regulator's perspective is that when we were focusing on this, we were saying, well, this is a new system out there. And even though our present system isn't perfect, we at least want it to be as secure or have the same amount of transparency. I'll ask all the panelists this question, just in terms of comparing the digital space and the blockchain space with our legacy systems. Is it more or less vulnerable to these types of attacks and thefts? that we're talking about, where North Korea or other rogue actors can simply go in and grab stuff and then do bad things with it. Why don't I start with you, Blake?
Yeah, so kind of building off Kris, I believe that cryptocurrency is a terrible technology for criminals to use. It's so traceable. And I was really encouraged to see the general crypto tracing community follow the Bybit hack through multiple decentralized exchanges and continue to follow it. So I'm living proof that governments are extremely good at catching bad actors in crypto. So I also am a firm believer that the US government is the best in the world at securing crypto evidence. So as we're talking about whether or not our Bitcoin reserve might be hackable, remembering the Bybit hack is the greatest bank heist in history so far, I'm also very confident that our Bitcoin reserve will be safe, just from what I've seen.
Erin, what do you think?
Well, as much as I admire my colleague to my right, what I would also say is that I think there is a great perception out there right now, particularly by the Chinese organized criminals, that no one's coming for them, and that this is absolutely the way to steal a generation's worth of wealth from the United States and reset the financial order, and that's what's happening. So, yes, they did take you down, and I'm sorry about that, but there are a lot of major players who are not being taken down and who are acting with impunity with billions and billions of dollars now. That is also linked to nation states. That we've got a major enforcement, sanctions opportunity, I'll say it that way, that is kind of flying under the radar as humans on both sides of this are being destroyed in mass.
Just a quick note, I'm extremely glad that I was caught.
Me too.
It was the
I know.
only honest way out of that life mistake, and it did derail my journey for about 10 years, but ultimately got to be blown away by how many good-hearted people at the FBI are trying to catch bad actors and succeeding. So,
And you're both, I'm hearing from both of you, that we could do better, with respect to this. So, Kris, what's going on politically? I mean, that's an issue that's going to be of focus, on Capitol Hill.
I think, despite what we're talking about, one stat to keep in mind, and for the overall perspective, the UN estimates that 2 to 5% of the traditional financial system is illicit activity. That amounts to trillions of dollars
Right.
a year. Vice, I can't remember the number that was in, I think TRM's lab or Chain Analysis report. It was something around the order of magnitude of around 45 billion. A lot of money, but much less than trillions. And so proportionately, the estimate is somewhere less than 1% of activity on chain is illicit. Again, smaller proportionally, much smaller volume-wise, but the reputational issues that the industry is already digging out of a hole, and proportionally, so much of it, for example, is going to North Korea as this one example, that it's a very visceral issue that the government, I think, has to take seriously. Put this in perspective, after this Bybit hack and the moving around of funds, some have been laundered, a bit has been seized through TRM's work, I think in the panel I was on earlier with the T3 FCU. But now North Korea, they've flipped ETH into Bitcoin, is the 5th largest holder of Bitcoin, government holder of Bitcoin in the world. That's a little stark, at least from what we know what the government's own. It's pretty shocking, but that catches the eye of government officials, whether it's FinCEN or folks on the Hill as well.
Okay. Going to shift it a little bit here and get back to Erin. And this is, talking about the current environment in which we're in right now. We're all excited about the fact that on the regulatory front in the United States, things are beginning to open up, and we're really pushing more than ever before to become a leading country, with respect to innovation. From your perspective, Erin, in terms of the things that you've seen, how is that a good thing and how is that a bad thing?
Well, firstly, I like rules, and so I've been I appreciated your conversation with Tether this morning, and I heard what I heard from Tether was that they want to be part of the solution, and I've had my eye on Tether for 3 years as I've watched all of the fiat currency from victims get converted to Tether and then moved to bad actors. So I welcome a situation where we need more KYC and more AML and more constrictions for Tether. What I would also say is that that I wouldn't want to just think that regulation of this industry is going to fix it. I think that we have a major problem in the lack of accountability when it comes to telco, when it comes to messaging apps, when it comes to social media, and that regulation really needs to be imposed on those breeding grounds for scammers, and that there are a lot of ways to fix this problem. This problem is so great that it requires every single tool in every single arsenal on it. So yes, regulation will be part of that. So also should be regulation of telcos. So also should be sanctions enforcement. That this is that big of a problem that requires all of it.
Would you say, and I'll throw this out, kind of like as a wild card, Blake, the fact that we now have so many innovators in this dynamic space, it's not just shedding light on this space, but it's shedding light on some of the problems that we have in our legacy sector as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the fact that you log into your banks using SMS two-factor verification enables SIM swapping attacks to even happen. It should be completely illegal. Technology's moved way beyond the ancient, verify you are who you say you are by having access to a phone number. This is how a lot of these victims are getting hurt. So there's an ample opportunity for builders like me to liaise with regulators and lawmakers and law enforcement. And I think Silicon Valley and kind of the tech world should really be encouraged to suggest better options and to interact with their governments. I think often we see it as impossible to change the way that things are, but we need to step up and get people away from unsafe technologies.
And I'll throw in one thing that I've always thought as a regulator is that you shouldn't be creating an environment in which people are running away from regulation. You should be creating an environment in which you're encouraging them to innovate and run towards some of the protection that regulation actually provides you. Expanding just a bit further, Kris, we talked about this before. We've been focusing on national security in this context in the financial sector space, but your blockchain applies across the board. What are you seeing and hearing with respect to developments, for example, in the military or other uses, and how we're going to need to be focused on national security aspects there?
Well, two things. One, before I address that head on, we've touched on this concept, but really, to be clear about it, blockchain is not the focus of hacks or people stealing money. It's been the vector that allows people to do it more quickly and often permanently. And so when we have these issues of education and having controls at the bookends of these entry points at the financial system, that's extremely important. From a very broad level, DoD, national security writ large, geostrategic competition with China, that's something where China, for example, is building out blockchain networks. The BSN, Blockchain Security Network, I think it's called. They're using a walkway tech model where they're building out a network and inducing and encouraging people to build on it, and also building some applications upon it, sort of the TikTok model, and making these addictive or easy to use applications where you can guarantee that the Chinese will have backdoors into these networks and the applications that they're building. They say they're open, but China uses a whole of government approach to their national security and their activity. And so that you can guarantee is happening. But on the flip side of things, there are actually some people here that are today working on these issues from the DoD perspective and people working with DoD in the private sector to build applications, decentralized communications networks that allow DoD to communicate with itself in a secure way that can't be hacked. There's a company here, a member company of the chamber called Balcony Technology, that has built an application for blockchain non-financial use case to help track more efficiently real estate transactions at sort of the state and city level, municipal level. But in their work and the innovative approach that they've taken, they've learned that they have been able to identify metadata in some of the paper documents that are being put on chain to identify Chinese actors that are purchasing land in proximity to U.S. bases and other sensitive installations. And so there are a lot of applications like that. Some are sort of, maybe accidental is not quite the right term, but inadvertently discovered, and now they're leaning into that national security application technology that they built. So it's very interesting. It's important work, and I think a lot of the blockchain applications from a DoD perspective, the kind of the non-financial use cases are, we don't hear about them because the token go up paradigm is not at play, but there are people building on these types of applications.
We'll be hearing more and more about it. So we could go on for this topic for a long time. I think we have 2 minutes, 1 minute, 2 minutes. And I asked each of the panelists to think about if there was one message that they wanted to deliver to this group to make sure that you took home to share it. So Blake?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing that's changed in cryptocurrency since 10 years ago when I got into Bitcoin is stablecoins. And I see stablecoins of today as dollarization. America cannot lose its lead in the stablecoin industry, and it's paramount that we build privacy into stablecoin technologies.
So privacy might be the factor that actually keeps us, to have our dominance. Erin?
I would say that I wish I could corral all of this enthusiasm into also a recognition that there are safety concerns that we need to think about, that in order to prop this up as the safest way to move money, we have to make sure that we are protecting novices and protecting people who are being swindled. And so I would also convey a sense of urgency that this is entrenched. I just came back from Cambodia. I've seen the scam centers. They are building. They are bigger than I thought they were. They are more in your face than I thought they were. They are absolutely in plain sight and growing. So I would just convey a sense of urgency.
Kris?
I think that leaning into a public-private partnership models where the government is encouraging growth, subsidizing in some cases through academia and other programs, InQtel and other NIST, other programs to help build the standards and the platforms that we will be using that will set the stage for the rest of the world to use, and the educational piece around that, because there's a huge educational gap, even from people in this room often, that the people in this room are not immune from being scammed through SIM swaps and all sorts of other activities. So I think that would be the thought.
Yeah. So I'll just leave it at that. We tried to talk on personal issues, institution issues, and national issues. And I hope that you take the opportunity to engage with any of these great panelists here in the breakout sessions. Thank you very much.